Right. I think we should get started. That's impressive
Yeah.
turnout for a post-Christmas thing. So anyway, yeah. So the purpose of today's chat was really just to say hi to all the amazing people who do maintenance and things in the space, and a chance to look into the next year and things we might want to change or improve, or if there's ways we can support you guys better, or anything like that. Really, it was just for a bit of a chat. I wanted to get everyone just to introduce themselves and just say, the sort of things they've been involved in terms of maintenance over the last year, perhaps things you've learnt, things you want to share, and in some sense make see if it's worth kicking off a proper forum for people to share learnings. Certainly from the training side, we've done this. We set up a training Google group, started to move all the online training, and actually the amount of cross-pollination and cross-learning and sort of things that brought to that was really quite impressive. So it seemed like a good thing to try and do it for the maintenance as well. And I know Adrian's been thinking about this a bit as well, with sort of thinking, how do we make sure we catch all sorts of maintenance, not just the big ticket items, but the little ticket items that perhaps don't get spotted, don't get reported.
Sneak up and catch us.
Yeah, they sneak up and catch us, or they don't get reported because they're not that important yet. And then it's only when things go down in flames that they actually get reported, when things are properly broken. Anyway, so we'll do that. But yeah, I hope everyone's doing well. Should we start just by everyone just introducing themselves? And I guess the main thing I'm interested, or I think it'd be useful for everyone to share, is what you've been involved in maintaining, perhaps the last year or perhaps earlier. What that tends to look like. So the sort of things that you get involved in because of that. So the regular stuff and the emergency reactive stuff, just to give people a flavour of the sort of things, see if there's any commonalities. Go ahead.
Do we want to keep it like a couple minutes short?
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
Like 10 of us.
Yeah, just like 1 or 2 minutes. Just say who you are, what you maintain, the sort of things it entails, and maybe if there's any things that you've learnt over the last year that you might want to share with other people that they might find useful. And then later on we can talk about different ideas, and also we want to look at potentially, we're pretty sure we want to put out some sort of email address that everyone knows, that anyone in the space can report, rather than it being very segmented or whatever, just so we can catch anything, even if it's a light switch or some paper running out or whatever it might be. Plants looking tired.
Does that mean, is that going to be the same email then, where if someone wants to say the 3D printer's not working, and if so, does that mean that someone will sort through them and get them sent to the right person that needs to fix it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what we want to discuss, is like what could it work like, because there's a level of triage and stuff like that, but it's useful to know that the light switch in the ladies' toilets is starting to become dodgy, but that's not the same as maybe the laser cutter is out of alignment, right, which is much more high level thing or something like that. Yeah, so hopefully you've got some ideas there. All right, well, let me go to the list so I can just go down. I'm going to start with, Katie, do you want to start? Because you're on the top of my list.
Cool. Hi, my name is Katie Marshall. I've been a member of MakeSpace since September 2014. I am an owner of the 3D printers and an owner of the vinyl cutter, and I've helped be a trainer for both the 3D printers, the vinyl cutter and the laser cutter. I think at one point I wanted to put myself in for more stuff, but Jonathan thankfully said no, which is really good. I've helped maintain the 3D printers now 3 years, I think. And that normally entails just making sure that people are using it correctly and that it doesn't get clogged up, doesn't get worn down. We're keeping on top of what parts we have. We're keeping on top of the errors that we get to make sure that if the same printer is having the same blockage, there's something that is consistently happening to it, whether that means that people are using it incorrectly or the machine itself just needs a more thorough maintenance to make sure there isn't something more we can fix it with. For the vinyl cutters, I haven't really done a lot with that, and I was actually saying to Jonathan that I want to write up a proposal to improve on it as well as amend some of the information we have, because that's one of the things that's kind of holding it back from being used a lot more regularly. And that's a similar thing, making sure it's working, putting any proposals forward for any updates to improve it, be it for more accessibility or just to upgrade what capabilities we can do with it, and what resources the other members of Makespace might have for using with it. That's me.
Great.
Very cool. So we've got Steve next, and Katie, that was perfect. Like, I think that was about the right length as well. Just trying.
Thanks.
Yeah. Steve, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so I'm Stephen Harrison. I've been a member of Makespace longer than I can remember. I'm a owner and trainer on the 3D printers, although I haven't done much recently. And I'm also an owner and trainer of the reflow oven. So the reflow oven has been very well behaved and not gone wrong, although I'm waiting for it to burst into flames randomly one day. 3D printers, I think Katie summarized it very well. It's generally stuff the users have done in day-to-day usage with blocked nozzles, or walking off before the first layer is done, and so not catching the filament going around the nozzle, and then all going horrible. Occasionally some random bits and pieces, just wear and tear, but I think most of the time it's just random bits that the users have done, or they think the bed's level or whatever. Andrew and Katie have done an amazing job of catching most of that, and have certainly taken my fair share of the work out of that side of things. So I think perhaps worth mentioning here, I found probably one of the most difficult things is actually been bringing on board new owners and trainers. Back in the day, there was sort of me and Rob, Andrew and Katie, like I said, have done a great job of coming on board and picking up the thing, but I think we don't perhaps appreciate how much work it is to bring on a new owner, and the knowledge transfer to that. I think we've got a couple of other people around. I'm not sure if they are still owners or not, but
Yeah.
that's definitely a something that I think would help Makespace going forward, to be able to have that transition cleaner and easier to pick up.
Well, that sounds like quite a good topic. I'll note that one down, and perhaps we will come back to that, because I assume there's a number of different aspects of bringing on the owners. Yeah.
Can you add to that note as well? Because there's also, once we've brought on people, I was just realizing retention, keeping them as owners and making sure they actually contribute as owners without it being like because obviously we do say you don't have to, you volunteer as much as you want, but at the same time, if we've already trained some people, it's like, can you also do some stuff before you completely disappear? So retention is a good thing to be looking at as well.
Yeah, it's easy to lose track of who is owners and who's active and stuff. Yeah,
I think that's one of the things that we've identified as a candidate challenge, and I think let's tackle that as one of the subjects after we've gone through everybody's.
Yeah. That's cool. Okay, so yeah, bring on board new owners, and it sounded like, Steve, you actually alluded to a couple of different aspects of that, which is interesting. And then Katie, you've just mentioned retention, which I guess is partly to do with an amount of effort you put in, and then yeah, okay, all right, cool. Yeah, thanks, Steve. That's brilliant. Got Alaric next.
Can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I had my mute on. Sorry, been around, I think, about 3 years now. General dog's body in the place, I think.
Is that the official note that I write down?
Yes. Capital D, capital G. Right, try and maintain membership by inducting people and starting them off well. Look after just about everything in the metal workshop at the moment, although I would dearly love to get somebody else on board to help me. Currently looking after the bandsaw, the belt sander, the CNC router, and of course the laser cutters. That's me.
Cool. Was there anything else you wanted to add to that? Like things that you thought were interesting topics that we should get to?
Well, I think you're covering quite a few of them, is getting people on board. I just feel that there are too many people at Makespace who are not pulling their weight. I hammer it in every single induction that the reason they're only paying £40 a month is because they're expected to contribute in some other way. And I feel too many aren't contributing at all.
Okay, cool. All right, so so that's another one noted down. So who was next? Oh man, the list order is changing. So
Oh.
theoretically, Jonathan, you'd be next. Should we skip you for the moment?
Okay.
Well, no, actually, no. Why not, Jonathan? Do you want to talk through? So obviously, you're a slightly different role, but I'm sure you get involved in this stuff as well. So.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jonathan. I've been at Makespace since kind of December 2015, but due to some issues with my induction, I only got my fob in January. Yeah, I had to make some changes there. I don't look after any of the equipment at all. I look after the space in general, most of the people. Generally shit on a few people from time to time when things go wrong. And in similar role to Alaric, help out in many general places. That's pretty much me.
Cool. Okay, cool. Cheers, Jonathan. I think then Matthew might be next.
I've only been a member since October, so I haven't really done a lot yet.
Sorry about that. Yeah,
I haven't really done a lot.
Vaccine sorted, right?
I've sort of got involved as much as I can into the lasers. I've used the lasers quite a bit, so I started noticing a few things. I've been working with Alaric and Ward on getting some test profile. You've probably seen them floating around. Some engraving and cutting settings on a template, so people can come in and go, right, let's cut this, and then they can work out their settings from that. I've also been working with Ward on getting some training on the CNC router sort of setup. At the moment there really isn't a great deal of it, and yeah, I haven't really done a huge amount.
Oh yeah, don't worry, don't feel guilty. I mean, it's amazing that you've done that much, given that basically we've had to be closed, sort of semi-closed most of the time. Okay, cool. I mean, well, actually, yeah. Before we move on, Matthew, I know you haven't really seen much, but any initial observations? Sometimes the new fresh eyes are interesting. Anything you want to mention?
Don't
worry.
Not that I can think of at the moment.
Yeah, no worries. All right, Alan, do you want to go next? Is that okay?
I think he's muted.
Yeah, you're still on mute, Alan. Actually.
Hi. Now we can hear you. Good.
Yeah, I was just having a cup of tea delivered. I beg your pardon. That's why I was slightly distracted. Well, actually, Matt and I, and Stefan are owners for the wood lathe. I've done, apart from contributing in the training materials, I've not been to Makespace now for 9, 10, 11 months. I've not done anything practical contributing. The biggest issue, and Matt may well want to add to this, biggest issue at the moment is the kit is getting fairly old, and together with Matt we have brought some old replacement parts to keep it going. But there is an issue about the replacement of the wood lathe, and that's I think Stefan is putting together a case for a replacement of the wood lathe. It's taken up a fair bit of space in the wood shop as well. It doesn't get massively used. I mean, what I feel what is happening that a few people are using it extensively, but it's not generally widely used in Makespace. We had a time when an awful lot of people came through training, but again, people, I think they saw the possibilities of it, but didn't actually then commit to using it for some times after that. So I think the biggest issue there is actually the kit itself, and the thing that goes together with that. Again, it's an issue that's been raised in other forums. Is that the sharpening of the tools? I think that getting the tools usable is one of the biggest complications at the moment, because as Alaric knows, there's the discussions going on about the hazards around the fast grinder and who can use the fast grinder. So I mean, they're the issues at the moment. But Matt may well have another perspective on it, because Matt and I are both co-owners and we both train. Enough for now?
Yeah, that can be enough for now. If that sounds good. Yeah, I mean, so this presumably is part of some of the plans you're looking at, actually, of upgrading a lathe or proposing upgrading a lathe and things like that.
I think the upgraded lathe would have a number of benefits. It would allow people to have a much more potential in making a wider range of different things, and it would also free up some space. It's a little practical thing. It is a bit of a beast. It's an enormous thing. You know, you can turn a snooker cue on there if you really want. I've not seen anyone try it. And actually, I think given the limited space in there and the number of bits of kit that people want to bring in and how they want to work, it would actually be a significant benefit if we lost that lathe and brought in a much more a physically smaller a variable speed lathe that would allow people to have it would be much more useful, I think, in wood turning. I don't do a lot of wood turning even when I've been there a couple of years now, but I don't do an awful lot of wood turning there. I tend to do the training mostly because I've got my own kit at home. The kit I come to MakeSpace to use is the CNC router, the laser cutter, and the glass kiln.
Okay, cool. I've added to the list.
Can I quickly say something?
Yeah,
I just want to know, Alan, are you been talking with the wood people, because we've been having a couple of discussions about changing it up. I just want to know if you've been involved in those conversations.
About what? Doing it?
So there's been a conversation about upgrading, sorting out, improving the woodshop as a whole. I've been talking with Tom, Chris, and Jonathan. Can you remember anybody else? There's a couple of people. We had a discussion like 2 weeks ago about wanting to improve
Alan,
the woodshop.
I think you're involved in that, aren't you?
Are you? Okay, cool. Because I was about to say, because like all you said there is really good to be having that involved in that. And I just couldn't remember if I saw your name or not.
I think Stefan at the moment is putting, and I did put an argument together when I first joined, because it seemed to me at the very beginning that the lathe was a little bit sort of 1980s type really. But that it didn't happen at the very beginning, and I think it's a difficult thing for the directors to make a decision on, really, because at the moment my instinct is that people aren't using it because it doesn't really do the job that they might want to, that doesn't make the things they want to make. But actually, you've got to make that commitment to getting some better kit in order then to attract people to start using the kit. And it's a difficult thing to play. It's an act of faith. It's a confidence thing to invest in the kit, and then people will start coming together and using it.
Yeah, it's knowing when to start on that cycle. Do you get new kit because you hope you're going to get more people, or do you wait to get a bit more people before you get new kit to have them have better toys to work with?
So yeah, I mean, okay, so I've added equipment insights and upgrades because I think that is important. And you also mentioned what I think of as opportunity costs. So, it's actually to buy equipment. That's the sort of thing we can go and raise money for. Raising money is actually not hard. But space is something that is finite. So, and so I think sometimes people don't realize, how that the space is way more valuable than cash. Right? We can go and raise cash, but space is a lot harder.
Just a point there, if it helps short term, you could shorten the lathe bed quite easily. It's not a difficult job.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, so yeah, okay, that sounds really good. But it sounds like basically equipment insights and upgrades, and as you say, Katie, you could say it was chicken and egg, but often it's not, right? I mean, you need to get a few enthusiastic people, where a few is probably 4 or 5, and if they are convinced it would have the effect that you're talking about, that's usually enough, right? So you need to break that chicken and egg cycle somehow. And the way to do that is find enough enthusiastic people who can see and believe that it will happen, and then we just take a risk, right? It's a risk, right? We do things that might not work. That's fine. As long as we're not making stupid, financial or space risks, then those are the risks we want to take to improve things.
Certainly, I thought that I didn't think MakeSpace was short of money. I don't think MakeSpace is short of money.
No, if we need money, we just go and raise money. It's not a problem. Yeah.
Well, let's see what happens this time round then. As I say, there is a proposal going to replace it with a new bit of kit, and I'm sure that there will be the 4 or 5 people that want to use it.
Yeah, that's very cool. Right, my list is flipping, so but I think Andrew, you're next.
Oh, well, yeah, my name's Andy Burrows. I am an owner on the 3D printers. Haven't got a lot more to say than Steve and Katie have already said. Lots of bed leveling, nozzle unblocking, that kind of thing. Also own the or maintain the badge maker, which is 0 maintenance, so that's a win. Yeah, and also I guess not really part of this forum, but similar sort of people, owners. Jonathan and I look after the community account where the materials that we sell in the space for your equipment is managed through. So if you want to talk about materials you're selling alongside the equipment, yeah, you can talk to me or Jonathan. But yeah, that's what I do.
Do you want to just also explain, perhaps everyone knows on the call, but do you want to just explain very briefly how the community account works, just in case for some people that's a bit magic?
Well, how does it work? Good question.
Well,
so,
I mean, it's very simple, but it's only simple if you know, right?
Yeah, so all the money that comes in through our Zettel goes into the account, and then out of that account we buy the materials that we sell in the space. So the ply and the perspex for the laser cutters, the filament for the 3D printers, wood blanks for the lathe, that kind of thing. And yeah, it's kind of in the account, we keep track of money coming in for a particular, so for 3D printers, the money coming in for selling filament, and it's out of that pot of money that we buy the new filament in. So we're not trying to make a profit out of any of this, but we're just trying to cover costs and make sure that yeah, that pot of money stays buoyant. So we sell the filament for a bit more than we buy it for, because not everyone pays for it, or some of it gets lost or goes bad. So but yeah, generally it's just kind of yeah, not making a profit, but just covering costs and a bit of wastage.
And also emphasizing that it's separate from the rest of the MakeSpace.
Yes.
So it's a pot of money that belongs to the members who use the equipment, essentially.
Yeah, it's managed entirely separately. Yeah, by Jonathan and I, in an entirely separate spreadsheet.
I mean, so I've just added that to the list as well, just in case new equipment needs new materials, or there's ideas for expanding, you know, what's available, or identifying things that are going wrong. You know, so people know the reason we use credit cards now is actually having a lot of cash in the space caused one person to step over the line and steal some, right? And so actually, in hindsight, changing to a credit card has worked for lots of good reasons, but it eliminated that problem. So it's useful to perhaps check in on those sort of things to check everything is working fine. You know, so obviously flag it if it's not, or whatever. But it, you know, it is how it works now. I think it works quite well, but it could always be improved or expanded or changed, I'm sure. Right, who was next? Paul. Where's it? Paul, yeah. Hey, Paul.
Yeah, how's it? So yeah, my name is Paul Witz. I'm here really just to be an audience, because I'm not even in the same country, much less the same makerspace. But this topic of how to maintain a makerspace is something I'm extremely interested in. So I think it'd be a bit strange if I made any opinionated suggestions about your space. I'm actually coming in from South Korea at the moment. What I do here is I'm a freelancer. I teach digital fabrication and I run mobile workshops, especially before COVID. So I'm always looking for better storage systems for parts and lots of these very expensive, very small components and things like that. So for example, carrying around kit for 10 students to run a workshop somewhere on Arduino. I'm always thinking about how to do it more efficiently, and how to be how to also, when stuff's in storage, logically store things. I helped commission a small makerspace before. So when it started running, my main focus was probably keeping the place clean, and also suppose, firmware demon hunting for PCB mills and Chinese-speaking 3D printers. And also teaching safety, I suppose. That's something I'm always worried about, how to really drill it into equipment users' heads about safety and also cleanliness, which relates to safety. So that's my background. But as I say, I probably won't be making any suggestions. Thank you.
And are you actively involved in some form of makerspace or hackerspace at the moment? Like running?
No, everything's sort of very much locked down at the moment in South Korea. So I'm busy making. I'm switching to trying to make an online course on PCB design. While I wait for once things are a bit better, then I'll probably run courses again.
Yeah,
but
cool.
again, these courses are run at different locations all the time. So I'm carrying lots of kit around for teaching soldering at this place, or teaching like a specific course on some Arduino related topic usually.
Yeah. Well, don't feel afraid to throw in some ideas, and also, I mean, perhaps not a topic for now, but Katie, I know you and other people have run, classes and things like that, and I suspect a lot of the things, Paul, that you're worrying about, just like efficiently knowing that the class is going to run okay because you have everything you need, that you really do have the 10 of everything and whatever. I'm sure Katie and co have seen that pain as well. So you never know, there might be a fun discussion to have sometime anyway. The fact that you're mobile probably forces you to do some of the things that perhaps would still benefit us even though we're not mobile. So MakeSpace doesn't generally do outreach generally. It's more about bringing people into the space, but I'm sure there's things you're learning that would be interesting to us.
Oh, I'm going to learn a lot. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, no, well, thanks for joining. And then Ricardo, I've got on the list.
Yeah, so I'm Ricardo, been a member for a year and a half, something like that, maybe 2 years now. I became a trainer on the Tomac a couple of weeks before lockdown, so I haven't actually trained anyone. And I helped putting together the thickness course. And while I was doing it, the blades got blunt. I helped replacing it, and therefore I became one of the maintainers for it. But I don't have any experience whatsoever on how these things usually work. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay. Who have I missed? Adrian, I guess.
Matt, I guess, is next.
Oh, Matt. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Matt. Where is Matt?
He's not got his camera on.
Bottom right on my screen.
I guess okay, well, ghost.
If Matt's having issues, I can go next.
Oh yeah. So Matt's on mute and with no video, so maybe he's having a connection problem or something.
Yeah. So I'm Adrian, Adrian van den Heever, with Simon, Ward, and Chris. We jointly take legal responsibility for MakeSpace, the company, as well as the things that might go wrong. They shouldn't, but they might go wrong in MakeSpace. So the four of us are very keen to know that the equipment that is available is not only being safely used, but is also appropriate and is in a condition that allows it to be safely used by members. I guess as far as maintenance goes, I've been involved in maintaining pretty much everything other than the 3D printers, which have always had a very good and stable maintaining group of people. My background is in electronic engineering, radio engineering in particular, but I, in a different life and early in my career, was involved in very large industry where we had very large workshops, so workshop with nearly 1,000 people working across different trades. So I've had an opportunity over my engineering career to see a lot of the equipment that we have being used in many different forms. my interests at MakeSpace, in addition to the equipment, there's a lot of stuff that you don't normally see happening. We've got the IT that happens behind the scenes. We have a lot of stuff related to cache and management and a few other things. So across the directors, we divvy that up, and whoever has bandwidth picks up much of that, and that's really where I pitch in a lot of time. And something that Simon, myself, Ward, and Chris have been talking about is how we try and achieve something even better than what we have now at MakeSpace, where as MakeSpace has developed over time, we've gone from a scenario where a piece of equipment would break and it would potentially take several weeks for it to get fixed, through to some equipment having very active participants who keep an eye on the equipment, keep it working, respond very quickly to issues, but also recognizing that some of the other equipment, we don't always know when it stopped working or when there's an issue that's happened with the equipment. And that's the sort of thing that we're looking to a forum like this to try and improve. So that's me.
Very good. I've just poked Matt via the chat and I haven't seen anything, so I think maybe he's distracted or hasn't been able to connect properly. One thing that I thought might be interesting, so everyone's given a bit of an intro, but what perhaps wasn't clear is how much of maintenance you see as being reactive and how much is sort of, I don't know, what do you call it, regular,
scheduled
and reactive. Because one thing we noticed about training, so it was really good having a group all sharing ideas and bouncing off each other and whatever, but training has this nice property that it's fairly scheduled, right? You can schedule thing and people allocate some time and that's when they're going to go and do some training. I think it's got really nice properties, but also as a group there's a lot of things, whereas maintenance perhaps has a bit of both reactive and scheduled, and presumably classic 5 whys, you can turn reactive maintenance into scheduled maintenance when you understand what is the sort of issues that happen. So I think with the 3D printer, I suspect a lot of what would have been reactive 3 years ago is no longer reactive because either the problem has been eliminated entirely or it's caught by certain scheduled maintenance or whatever. So I guess what I'm interested before we perhaps go on to ideas of what else we can improve is could people just give a sense of the sort of things that tend to be reactive maintenance, i.e. unscheduled, something breaks and then someone has to almost go out of their way to come in and do something to get it back up and running. I don't know who wants to start, but maybe
Alaric here.
Alaric,
basically all the Amber stuff. It's nobody owns, nobody looks after, and there's certainly no proactive maintenance done on it. Okay. Belt sander is a very good example. I went to adjust the bed on it the other day, only to find the actual cast iron arms that support the bed are cracked. And I suspect they've probably been like that quite a while. Unless somebody does something, there's nobody checks anything out. The pillar drill, there's a bearing going in it. It's been going for a long time. But again, that's the sort of thing that doesn't get any TLC.
So these are things where is it a cursory observation would have, like if you were walking around the workshop just having a look at everything, just is that right, wiggle that, does that feel okay, you would pick those things up, or is it quite in-depth sort of things you're talking about here where you really would actually have to spend quite a lot of time with a machine to spot this?
With the pillar drill, anyone using it can hear the bearing is pretty horrible, but we've lived with it for a while because there's been other priorities. In the case of the belt sander, now I rebuilt it about a year ago, Adrian? Put new bearings. I turned up new shafts because the other shafts were worn down. Fortunately, we got the lathe, can do these things. And I got that running. But it wasn't until I was going to use it the other day. When I went to adjust the bed, it wouldn't adjust properly. It wasn't at 90 degrees. So I had a look to find both the supporting arms are cracked. So that is something users should be spotting, but they didn't.
Well, yeah, and I think our observation from some of these things is, so some people obviously don't spot these things. They haven't got the competence or understanding or just experience of these sort of things to spot it, which is fine. I mean, that's what MakeSpace is about. That's not a problem. I think the other thing we observed was, I think even if people did spot it, they wouldn't necessarily know exactly what to do about it anyway, or who to turn to. And in the heat of the moment, you get frustrated and you go to a different tool or something like that, and it just gets forgotten, right? Because it wasn't totally the end of the world, but I suspect, yeah.
But to answer your question, all the Amber equipment basically falls into that group.
Okay.
I think there's also, sorry, there's also the more broad challenge of, a good example is the bandsaw, where we discovered during the year that the bandsaw table was cracked. Now, it's not something that the owners had picked up because it's a relatively invisible problem. And it's something that we've not done a lot of. And this is the structured scheduled maintenance, where you actually go and do a couple of physical tests on the piece of equipment itself, just to make sure that you can pick up problems like that. We've never done that in the past, and that's something we'd like to start understanding.
Yeah, I think Katie's got her hand up.
No, I'm waiting. This is me saying, can I speak next? I'm not saying for Adrian to speed up. Keep going with your point. I just want to say I'm next.
Okay, yeah, that's I didn't instigate the queuing system, did I?
Yeah, so I think it's something that is fairly generic across all of the equipment we have. If we're fortunate, somebody who has used the equipment previously will notice that something appears amiss, or if there's something that's relatively significantly wrong, somebody will flag it as being a problem. But where the issues are small and perhaps accumulating at a low rate, or where the user doesn't actually recognize that there's a problem, this is the sort of thing that suddenly becomes a big problem, and then it takes a lot of effort at that point to fix things.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, Katie, do you want to talk about? I assume yours is related to 3D printers, is it?
Yeah, it's related to 3D printers because that's the main one we get a lot of. Well, the main one I have to help maintain. The thing that's been getting the common thing with that is it's especially now that we have those whiteboards so people can write notes and stuff. So those are really helpful for people to. But no one can hear me. Sorry for that.
Yeah, no, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Sorry, no, I was reading the comment that just popped up from Matt. I got distracted.
That's right.
Now that we have whiteboards in front of 3D printers to be used for people to write notes down saying Jonathan Wolf is doing a 3D print, or I'm doing one, it's my own filament, put it somewhere safe. People are also using them as the easiest means of writing down what's wrong with them, which great, but that doesn't help if they don't also send an email. And so the thing that's obviously pointing out with that is if someone can essentially say right there and then, oh, bed's not level, filament got jammed, if you can give them a means of being able to put in a quick report, but it's just a matter of fact of how does that report get to the people that need to get it. Because there was one person who was in the space about 2 weeks ago when I saw that one of the printers said that there was a problem, and I kind of just got huffy because it's like, great, another printer with an error message on it, but no one's emailing the owners, so none of us know to need to come in. My work is 5 minutes away. I'm happy to pop in and sort a block nozzle, but I don't know about it because people don't know to email. And then I think I overheard someone being like, "Oh, I didn't even know there was an email." And it's like,
yeah, I think that's what we've noticed, especially as often it is, one of the management personally getting emailed when something is wrong, or Jonathan happens to be walking past, right? And if Jonathan isn't walking past, which is a very good service you provide there, Jonathan, just being nearby.
We need to be factoring in what is the easiest way for members to report an error rather than just simply. Because I know even for some people, like having to get out your phone and write up an email and then send that can be too hard. But also, I know for me, there are amount of times I get my phone out to just simply send an email saying, "Hey, I've used 2 plasters because I got paper cuts, or I sanded off half my nail." And every time I get my phone out, I'm immediately like, "Oh, a notification! Oh, this!" And then I put my phone back, and I'm like, "Wait,
you're distracted, right?"
Yeah. So doing that can sometimes prevent me from actually sending an update. But then there's also the fact of like, do we need to be having more actual scheduled regular maintenance checks. So all the 3D printers should just be checked every 2 weeks, just to say everything's working, and that way when we start noticing a small problem, we can address it sooner rather than realizing actually a whole machine's now gone and out for count, or it's going to cost us.
Well, you know it, yeah, you spot
more.
that something's on its way out or whatever, right? And you keep it.
Yeah.
Okay. Have we got any other people that want to sort of highlight things where reactive maintenance kicks in?
I think with the wood
regards to the.
Hang on, so who was talking? Sorry, hang on, Jonathan. I think
Alan
someone
and
else.
Jonathan.
It was Alan. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Alan, is it right if you do you want to go ahead?
Okay. Well, I'm speaking on behalf of Matt as well now, I guess, because we've done a lot of that maintenance together over the years, over the last 2 or 3 years. But I mean, there's definitely, particularly with the wood lathe, has a significant risk of things going wrong that could cause a significant accident. We have to regularly check things like the tightness of the bolts. We've got to check that the tools are sharp. So there has got to be that sort of routine maintenance. And at the moment, I think we're relying on Stefan, who is actually using the sensor and going in there on a regular basis. So we have to do that. But there's also just checking that the particular accessories are there and they're in place, because at the beginning we were finding that things would wander. A particular spanner that was there for a particular purpose would find itself somewhere else in the space and so on. So we were encouraging people to put things back and actually setting a scene, and this is what you can expect when you go to it, and this is what you should be leaving after you've done that work. There's also, I mean, some of that can be done almost by anybody, but again, with the wood lathe, it does help if you worked on the lathe over a period of time, because then you're attuned to the sounds that the wood lathe is making. And certainly Matt and I were alerted to the wood lathe when the motor was about to fail, and actually the physical temperature of it when you were touching it was getting overheated, and that prompted the replacement of the lathe. The replacement of the lathe motor. So I think it does help if people are familiar with that particular bit of kit, because then you do notice the things, and particularly with the wood lathe, I think it's a much more physical machine than many of the other machines in MakeSpace, and it does have the scope for accidents that can actually injure people. So I think that having regular maintenance sessions, but also being aware of how the machine is performing, that will prompt a particular check at a particular point in time.
Is there any sense of people understanding what bad sounds like? Do we have anything like that says, if smoke is coming out of here, that's probably a bad thing, or if this is making a knocking noise, that's probably a bad thing? I'm just trying to work out if do we have any sort of, I don't know what you call it, like
norms about. I don't
know. Perhaps there's not even anything you could do, but the way you're talking makes me think that how would I know that that's a normal noise versus, if I'm not a regular, if you're a regular user, as you say, you learn this thing, right? But you want to know what normal sounds like and what normal doesn't, what doesn't sound like.
You just have to learn it though. It's
and
just going to come
and that's what I was challenging. Do you actually have to learn that, or is there something?
And that's exactly the point. A typical user wouldn't recognise a change in tone, a change in frequency, a slight knock. I mean, the blessed thing knocks anyway, really. But some of the noises it makes are relatively safe, and some of the noises could actually turn into more hazardous things. So the typical user wouldn't know that, which is why it's more important that someone who does recognize those sounds and those movements and so on does check it actively on a fairly regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, it does make me think if there are things that we know that, especially if they're related to safety, that people could spot, and I guess you're saying in most cases they can't because it's a subtle change in, as you say, frequency or whatever. But I'm sure there are some things where it's like if something's rattling, that's bad. If something's
if it's
off
loose
balance
and wobbling,
if something's wobbling, then it's vibrating. This thing shouldn't vibrate because it should be nicely balanced or something like that. Those sort of things maybe it doesn't apply for some things.
In that regard, it's sometimes with machinery. I mean, obviously a lathe is something like a very complex animal, but for all equipment, there's probably like maybe 4 really common things that could go wrong,
right?
That
Exactly.
can be noticed. But having maybe a checklist above, like just keep it simple, to something like 4 points. If you're seeing this, speak to someone, like especially for a laser cutter. I mean, if a laser cutter fire is a terrifying thing, but usually it comes because there's something you can see is going wrong, like maybe the extractor's not working properly. Then you'll start getting a bit of flame.
We probably have some failure modes, like fans squealing on the laser or something, or they're blocked. Okay, well, don't try and run it because whatever, or the if the liquid's running, if the coolant's running algae, then
But I mean, having sort of like you said, a problem arises in having a way of, without spending like too much energy, to efficiently to actually help this thing, or to be notified of problems. Having sometimes I like to have before printouts by the machine involved with a bit of a checklist to remind us about safety, and also if you see a problem with this machine,
it's almost like don't be afraid to report it. If you're seeing this, don't be afraid to report it. It doesn't mean
exactly.
Okay. So the other thing that the other thing, Alan, you mentioned actually, which is interesting. We were talking about regular reactive maintenance, but you almost were talking almost about sort of proactive prevention of the need for maintenance. If you consider maintenance like replacing parts that go missing, right? The preventative maintenance might be, the shadow board or whatever, right? Those sort of little things that make it easier to avoid maintenance chores that aren't necessarily about wear and tear on a machine, but they might be misuse or putting things back or not cleaning things up, or I have no idea. But that's quite interesting. You mentioned, I don't know if that's explicitly what you were getting at, but there are things that we've definitely done over time, or people have done over time, that I'm sure have greatly reduced maintenance. Katie, have you got
in the training? We a lot of those things are explicitly covered in the training. That when people come to the machine, they expect to find this and they expect to do that. But I think sometimes the most valuable, apart from having regular checks by either Matt or myself or Stefan, often I think the three of us, when we go into the wood shop, even if we're not using the lathe, you just cast your eye over it. You have it. You can't avoid having a look at it and having a little check and on and so on. And that just sort of increases the frequency at which you're being confident that the kit is working. And
I guess that also allows you, and it doesn't have to be a experienced user, it could be any user could spot something was missing, even though they didn't try and use it. They might still report it because it didn't hinder them. Currently they probably wouldn't report it because it didn't hinder them, but it would hinder the next person who came next week. But had we known, it would have been replaced by then, so they would have had a better time. Okay, Katie, do you want to?
I just wanted to make a comment about something that I know I've been noticing, and it was something that I was going to try and address with helping with the redesign of the woodshop. But Makespace in general does have a bit of an issue in that we do have 40, 50 something posters just scattered around the space with various different levels of information, and all of them have their own tier of importance. So you'll have things that will say like, have you seen an accident? Report it. Here's what you need to know about IZL, his material for the Makespace laser cutters, how much it costs, and everything else. There's almost too much. It all just becomes a bit of a noise. So anyway, and even to the point now for COVID, we have all the new restrictions for people to be aware of. It just means it's a bit overwhelming for anyone to realize, to really know what they should be paying attention to and reading. We could quite easily be putting up all the training instructions so that everyone can remind themselves how to use a 3D printer, but that just means that there's
it's more blindness, right?
It's more blindness, and it doesn't work. Like my ADHD makes me just look at a wall of text and go, not interested. I'll just look for like the bold things. They're like, oh, warning. No, I didn't read anything else. What was I not meant to do? Oh, the thing I'm just doing. Sorry. So I feel like there needs to be a better way of passing this information to make sure it's there when people want to read more, but the important stuff's readily available, so no one actually does make massive fuck ups.
Okay.
Can I just
Alaric,
pop in
yeah.
here? I worked at Kodak for a short while in London. It's a massive factory, and the whole place.
The camera company, Kodak?
Yeah, with film. We were
Yeah.
producing film and photographic paper, which shows how long ago it was. And one of the things we discovered after doing quite a few surveys that the more signs you put up, the more people deliberately don't bother to read them, because it just becomes information overload. And what we did was we took all the signs down that we possibly could. We left the few legal ones that were there, and then just put up signs and changed them regularly, because a sign is only fresh the first time you see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Matthew, you were going to say something?
Yeah, so that's Katie's point. Also being a fairly recent member to join, I kind of started and didn't, I'd noticed something and I didn't know who to tell. I didn't know what, I think there's 4 or 5 email groups, and I was like, which one do I send this to? So I've sent a lot of emails to management, probably potentially not the right place to send it, but it went somewhere, and it was, so I know there's a problem with the 3D printers, and I think the 3D printed email was broken or something. So I just sent it to manage. I think I spoke to Jennifer on that one.
Can I come in there very quickly? As part of your induction, you're supposed to be getting a sheet with all this information on, all the email addresses. And Ward was updating it, and he hasn't, and that's why you didn't get it in your induction. So we must chase actually Ward for that, because that will solve a lot of what you just said.
But also, it's a good point, because at the point that it was happening, Matthew didn't know what the right route was to notify.
And management is the safe one at the moment, yeah.
Absolutely. So when in doubt, send it to management. But it is a valid something that we could do more to make that information readily available.
Yeah. So at this point, then what I'll do is I'll talk about the thinking around email addresses and reporting. So one of the nice things about moving everything to G Suite, and it's actually been really useful, is look at the craft that has built up over the years. And we had hundreds of email aliases, most of which were routing to people who didn't exist anymore, or there was 7 variations of 3D printer emails, and all this sort of stuff. But also they were routing to personal email addresses. So one nice thing that G Suite, or the approach I think is a nice approach we've taken with G Suite, actually, once it's forced us into that mode, is backing everything with a Google group, which can be private. But the nice thing there is it's a shared history that you can add people to at a later stage, and they can obviously go back in time and learn the history of what it is like to maintain the 3D printer or whatever. Anyway, so that's the approach we're taking now. But hang on. So Matt said, I can see you and I can hear you mostly, but no one can hear me. Okay, so so he'll send us later. Okay. So one thing we tried with the trainers was putting all the trainers on a group and having that as a discussion point so that everyone could collectively discuss. So we were thinking of doing that for maintainers and owners as well. But the other proposal is to have a catch-all maintenance email address that anyone can email, almost like as the default. Now, there might be specialism, as Katie highlighted. Maybe that's necessary. I think my gut instinct is triage is the right way to do it, and assume that the owners are the experts, not the members, because as Matthew's just highlighted, members, what do you want to do? You want them to say something. You just want them to say something, and they don't know who they're talking to or whatever. So what we were thinking of trying was actually setting up a Google group, which, so I don't know if anyone's familiar with Google Groups. It's now much more in part of G Suite, and it's like it does access control for Drive and all that sort of stuff as well, but it also has shared inbox features like a ticket system if you want to turn them on. And I haven't really explored it, but I'd love if some of you might want to explore that. So what we'd like to try is having a single maintainers or maintenance email address that is just the default anyone emails. And I would hope then that we're going to see a lot more of things that aren't necessarily the big ticket items like the laser cutter. So it might be a light switch, it might be a bandsaw vibrating, it might be anything. And if we start to see a lot more of this stuff, then hopefully we can think about, well, how do we tackle it? But I think the first challenge we'd like to look at the start of next year is, or yeah, it is next year, isn't it? Can we get
almost
almost, yeah. Don't worry about the reaction to the report, but really try and focus on getting the report in the first place.
Yeah.
Because ultimately we have, you know, hundreds of members that aren't very familiar, and they just drift past the space, and they come in and they come out, and they don't know it all, like, you know. So I think sometimes people forget how much you guys know about how things work or don't work. So we're gonna try that. So I guess I've got a few things to ask around that. Let me just get my notes.
Can I butt in for a second?
Yeah, go for
Right.
it. Yeah,
I'm wondering if you've thought about like a little iPad on the way out of Makespace.
I was going to say something like that.
I was saying thumbs up. I was like, yeah, that point, thumbs up.
So I've been at, you know, gyms where they've had them, where they've done upgrades, and they're like, you know, how was your experience today?
Yeah.
So have a reporting center.
I like that. Yeah.
Another little trolley. So literally, as you're leaving Makespace for the evening, you're like, oh yeah, this was broken, wasn't it? And you know, punching it and run off.
Well, yeah, even the happy, sad faces by the machine, right? You know, like, you know,
we were supposed to do something. Well, I was supposed to do something for the 3D printers for that, but I kind of
no. Okay, so this is actually one thing that I've found really exciting about the way the training group has worked. It is actually that someone's come up with an idea like that. Someone's gone and implemented it, wasn't necessarily the same one, and then everyone's just adopted it. You know, the way that online training has worked and stuff like that. So I think this is really exciting. So Katie, you're gonna.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, I was actually going to mention something about what Steve was suggesting with an iPad. Having something in Makespace, an iPad that is only meant to be used for giving updates and reports would be very beneficial, because it means it's something to go to. But one of the things that I've done for the 3D printers within this last year is that I made, to get away from the paper-based report keeping that we were doing, and because my handwriting is atrocious and I therefore knew no one was going to be able to read my updates, I made a Google form which would allow us all to be able to essentially tick certain boxes and then write a comment right at the end if we need to. But the way it worked was almost it was ways that you could just say, what printer had a problem? This one. What was wrong? This. Did you replace anything? Yes. And then it went into a sheet, so that way you could see like, oh, we need more Bowen tubes now because we're 3 down, or Katie fixed this problem, but Steve had this fix the same problem the day before. So it was all the way you can structure Google Forms and the way it can all be populated into a sheet. You could quite easily, I think I can make a form that would allow us to be able to have all the messages coming in via a category. So that either they're writing something about the laser color, they're writing something about the space, or they just have a complaint. So you can make it a lot easier for people to do that. So that's something you could do instead of it just being an email and someone has to read the email. You could already have it be that it's the content
categorized sort of. Yeah. Okay, Matthew, I think you were, hang on, Alaric. Matthew, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, just on top of Katie's I did just now, could we have some sort of like QR code on each machine or each space to make it so simple?
Getting so excited about QR codes.
I already had all these ideas. I'm just glad other people are saying them too.
To make it so simple.
Well, here are the collection of people who also will get excited about QR code, Katie. They're around you.
Yeah.
Yeah, to make it so simple that all someone's got to do is scan something and fill in a form, or fill it or scan something and it writes the email for them.
Yeah. Well, okay, but before we go down into brainstorming here, Alaric, sorry, do you want to?
Yeah, did I hear you say that G Suite has a ticketing system in it earlier?
Yeah. So
is there no benefit to us in using a ticketing system for faults?
So that but I didn't no. What I actually said was G Suite can operate as a shared or a collaborative inbox or something it's called, which is kind of like a, think of it if anyone's used Zendesk or something like that, right, for ticketing, I think of it like that.
So it's more the model of, rather than assigning a task to somebody, when someone picks the task up, they simply say, I'm picking up this task, and everybody gets to know that that's happening.
Yeah.
Oh,
so it'd be worth playing with. So the reason I like the Google, we're obviously trying to use Google as much as possible, because from access control and all that sort of stuff, it all integrates, right? So it's really quite cool, and reduces the number of systems we're running, which is reducing the maintenance. So that's good. yeah, it'd be cool if someone wants to explore that. But yeah, I think so. Yeah, before we dive into the ideas, I guess I wanted to ask the question that I kind of posed as a proposal, which is, at the start of next year, would people be comfortable with focusing on the aspects of making it easy for people to report problems more so than how we deal with the problems? Because personally, I think,
Yes.
yeah, okay. Anyone else? Is everyone else sort of comfortable with that?
Yeah, it might
Alan,
be
we
worth
can't hear you.
Alan, you're on
giving
mute.
a little bit of background on the thinking, looking at how things have gone with equipment at Makespace, where we have a strong owner group, we tend to not have issues. What tends to happen is the ownership of equipment rises, and then as people either get busy doing other things or move on to something else, the ownership tends to drop away. But what we do find is that the people like this group of people who are here now have a good general sense across all the equipment in the space of what should be done, what might be done, how to deal with an issue if it's happening. And so the thinking of having a single point that we send all this information for is, if it's something that Alaric would normally pick up, but Alaric's off doing some contract work somewhere, somebody else can say, yes, I recognize that's a problem, really should be dealt with quite quickly. I happen to know that so-and-so also knows how to deal with it. Or if somebody doesn't know how to deal with it, then you can put that question to this group of people. So
Yeah,
rather than,
discussion, I guess,
rather than a very small number of people trying to triage and sort out problems with equipment, we can actually use the skill set and the knowledge set of the maintaining group of people to flag issues and help solve the problem of how do we get it done. Not necessarily do it, but how do we get it done and what priority do we put on it?
Yeah. Steve,
So
were
that
you
was
sort of waving your hand? Or was that just excitement?
No, it was just me.
Enthusiasm.
Yeah, and I guess my take on this is also, I think actually a lot of stuff, like when we started, we didn't have much. We had a 3D printer and we had a laser cutter, and lo and behold, I set up an owners group for the laser cutter, and I think someone set it up for the 3D printer, right? But now we have a lot of stuff, and I think a lot of things fall through the gaps because it isn't big enough to have an owner, but it's really quite frustrating for people, but they don't report it. As Matthew said, like, what do you do? Well, you email management, I suppose. And for a lot of things, you won't bother because that feels like, why would I email management about, I don't know.
Yeah, I felt like
low toilet paper in the toilets or something. I have no idea. But yeah, exactly. Okay, but so
that is
okay.
Admin at Makespace.
Say again.
That is admin at Makespace, and that is given at induction.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So okay, that's great if people are comfortable with that. The second thing that I wanted to propose. So I have an opinion here.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead, Alan.
Just as you said, if everyone's comfortable with it, I'm not sure I'm entirely comfortable.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, go ahead, because that's exactly what we're looking for.
If there was one port of call for people to talk about problems and faults and whatever, then I feel that's going to be sort of overwhelming for most people to be looking at, and then a number of individuals, owners of particular bits of kit, would then be sort of searching through. I mean, there are email addresses for owners of particular machines, aren't there? I mean, there's a wood lathe at makespace.org, and I understand that management may find it valuable to see. And other people would find it valuable to see the broad range of issues that are going and maybe contribute, even though they're not necessarily the owner or the trainer. But I think from an individual machine point of view and a particular owner point of view, I like the idea of an email coming straight to me, Matt, and Stefan.
Yeah.
We know we can talk amongst ourselves about how we deal with it. If it was
Alan, just to explain though, I mean, because I think I agree with you at some level, but the proposal of the single point of contact is not an optimization for management. It's an optimization for members, right? Most members you know, if you looked if you looked at the number of email addresses we had and there was no consistency to them, I think most members were in the camp of Matthew, not knowing what to email. So I wouldn't take this as a optimization for management seeing everything, although I think that is definitely a benefit. I would be looking at this as if we can optimize so members report things, are more likely to report things, that's the optimization. And then actually solving that problem of triage is a problem that a smaller group of people, you know, there could be someone responsible for doing that. We could even pay someone to triage them if you wanted. I don't know, but you see what I mean? It's not necessarily a management optimization was the idea for this. It was a member optimization. Can we get members to instinctively know to report how they report something, whatever it might be, if you see what I mean? Because most members cross weird little circles, and you in the same way as you have your little circle, but I suspect you wouldn't know what to email if something in the fine metalwork bench area wasn't working.
Well, if there was a sign above the fine metalwork.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Metalwork, I'd email fine metalwork, whatever. But
okay, no, that's it. Yeah. Andrew, yeah, no, so that I think this is the debate. Yeah, we're gonna have.
Well, specifically on the sign thing, I was training the other day just before Christmas, and one of the guys I was training, I said, "Oh, if there's a problem, you know, if the bed's level needs leveling, contact the owners." He said, "Oh, how do we do that?" And so I pointed him at the poster, and I knew exactly which poster it was on. I knew what the answer was. I knew what I was looking for, 3D printers at Makespace, and I still couldn't find the email address on that poster for like ages. I'm like, there, I've just pointed. It's on this poster somewhere.
It's ingrained on my vision somewhere. Yeah.
I mean, to begin with, the poster was behind. We had to pull one of the printers out to see the poster. Yeah. And then
so this is Alan's point, right? Like it
was a wall of text, and I knew the answer. I knew which poster it was on. Never mind any of the other posters, and it still took me ages to find the answer to point him at it. So I think
that maybe this is about
one email address we could have in big letters, you know, everywhere. Like, yeah, I think there's
but I mean, Alan's got a point. Like, if that email address was different for each meaningfully big bit of equipment or something, then you could, as long as it was a clear, you know, QR code thing, that could be the label, right? It's the maintenance label, right? And we have a standard label that goes on every bit. You know, in fact, the red label could be the main, you know, the red, whatever. That could become the label, right? I don't know, but yeah. So I think there's a bit of a debate here about whether you split or not. My gut proposal at the moment is I'd rather make it as simple as possible for the user, and then us scratch our head about the different ways that we could triage. And if one of those things became for top bits of equipment, we add additional aliases. We then do that. But I don't necessarily want to start there having looked at the email aliases that we've ended up with over 7 years, and I couldn't tell you what they were, and theoretically I'm meant to know them all. So I think Alan's got Alan, this is the classic debate, right? Where do you, how do you cut through noise, right? Where do you do that? Especially as people have got very noisy lives. Okay, but it sounds like Andrew and Katie are sort of saying some sort of sticker, right? Rethinking the reporting mechanism, whether it's a QR code or a sticker or a
form to something.
Form, whatever. Yeah. Okay, that's cool.
Something to make it more streamlined, more accessible. What the good thing as well is following the user test of like one link, one click, right in there, off you go. You shouldn't have to click 3 or 4 things. You shouldn't have to go too far. If you've got a problem in your head, you want to immediately be able to go click, send the problem, rather than get distracted or forget about it, or then realize I don't want to have to do this, goodbye, and then they leave.
Well, so perhaps this is something where I'll write up the notes after this meeting, and perhaps some people that are interested in thinking about this part of the problem, because I mean, it feels like everyone's kind of, there's obviously debate and things to discuss, which is a bit more detailed than we perhaps need to go into this particular call. But there's a sort of general consensus that actually trying to tackle this problem and the user problem is not a bad thing. So that's good to hear. I just wanted to test one last thing then on people. So the obvious thing was to have a maintenance at Makespace email address. But one thing I'd been considering was, should we call it maintainers at Makespace rather than maintenance at Makespace, so that everyone appreciates they're emailing real people. Because for me, this feels like an opportunity to make it clear what the culture in Makespace is by people realizing that they're just emailing other actual people, not some sort of system. And I'm wondering if I read too much into this, but yeah, basically the difference between emailing maintenance at Makespace versus maintainers at Makespace is sort of personifying the, I don't know what you call it, but I'd like to get other people's opinion on whether this is important and whether I'm just overthinking it. Andrew, yeah, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, maybe at the risk of making the email address too broad and it hoovering up stuff we don't want it to, but I don't know, I just think both maintainers and maintenance are a bit kind of, I think your original point, your point just before about kind of making this kind of member or user centric was a good one. I think as a user, what are they thinking? They're not thinking about maintainers or maintenance. That's kind of what we think about it as. They're thinking about, I mean, help at Makespace, or it's broken at Makespace, or at Makespace. I think
it's not working.
It's not working at Makespace could be excellent. But yes, I think that's more user centric.
Okay, yeah, cool. Anyone else got any?
To Simon's point, and what we did do quite often in the past was we had this generic place that people would send messages to, and sometimes something would happen as a result. Trying to get this, the idea that the people who actually do the work of making the equipment continue running, which is partially this group here, is to try and give an identity to that group and call out the value in Makespace, because bringing a new piece of equipment into Makespace just has the pain of paying for it and getting it in place. Actually keeping it running for nearly 10 years is actually quite a significant challenge. And I think any opportunity that helps us share the scope of that challenge with members is a valuable learning experience.
And to see that they could become one of those people, because I think a lot of, I mean, you all do this for a reason, right? You get to meet people, you get to learn about machines, you get, it's cool, it's a way of giving back, it's all of those things, right? And I think if more people could understand that was even open to them, because I think unfortunately Makespace at some level runs quite well now. It's actually a little bit opaque,
invisible,
right? Invisible, yeah. So anyway, that was the idea. Okay, so Andrew, you've got help broken, it's not working. Any other sort of thinking about whether well, I guess my root question wasn't the email, it was about, do you make it feel like you're talking to people or you're talking to a system?
I think it should be people for definite. Makespace is definitely a people-driven place, and without those people, it doesn't work. I think the management makes it feel like your management or accounts is the
that's the administrative aspect,
side.
Right?
And then whether it's community or whatever the email ends up being called should definitely reflect people rather than a system.
Yeah, and that doesn't have to be the name. That can be the story behind the name, right? If it is, it's broken, the story is, when you email, it's broken, it goes to a group called this, So it doesn't have to be in the name, but okay. Yeah. Anyone else got any other?
Getting replies from you? I mean, if you post to that, you'll be getting a reply from Katie or from Alaric. We definitely shouldn't have any sort of auto maintenance bot replying to you saying your call is important to us, or that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
If you really want to get it fixed quick, come and help.
Yeah, come and help. Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but yeah, that's the footer in the email that's always there. Today your call was handled by whatever, who's one of the people who volunteered. Anyway, sorry. Anyone else got any sort of comments or ideas or?
It just comes to mind, and I'm trying desperate to remember the name of the chap now. The chap that did the guitars on the CNC.
Michael, yeah.
Oh, Michael, yeah. He put a system in place for the wood shop that was essentially a ticketing one that people he raised, or people in the wood shop could raise an issue, and then people could own it, could take ownership of it, and then he could then track the progression of that, And I thought that was a really nice system, to be honest. I don't know what's happened to it. But
yeah, he put Woodshop at Makespace together with a GitHub as the backbone or something. That kind of went defunct when Michael was not around as much anymore. But yeah, Woodshop at Makespace got quite a lot of use. That's where all the orange stuff was generally reported, and then Michael would handle it, or if it was something more technical, he would pass it on to Alaric.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it just come to mind now. But when that was working, it worked a treat, from my point of view. And I guess it was useful for Michael then to see that any issues with the wood lathe had been progressed. So he was seeing that sort of that progression and that resolution of any. And I guess if it hadn't been, he may well have then escalated it or contacted somebody else or dealt with it in another way. So there was that system, and that certainly did technically it did work.
And if people engaged with it, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so I mean, this sounds like thinking about the mechanisms, right? So I think if people are generally in agreement that we make it easier for users to report or whatever that mechanism is, that needs some thought to get it right, or maybe it doesn't need loads of thought. Maybe it just needs a bit of experimentation. Although we don't want to blast 101 different ideas at people. That's not helpful.
The verbalizing process of what happens after someone's done that.
Yeah.
Will there be somebody? I mean, will it be Jonathan who'll be actually reading all of these things, then redirect them to the people that need them? And how many messages come in per day? And what happens when people go on holidays? And I mean, will it be a technological solution? Will the emails be scanned for particular keywords like wood lathe or 3D printer, or will there be a sort of a button inside that will identify what particular bit of kit it's to do with? Because I think it's easy enough to identify an email address and everything goes to there, but I think it's important to follow that idea through and see what would happen once there are 30 emails coming in at all hours of the day and night. I mean, what happens at that point? How is that information then spread out?
Well, and that's the thing we can look at. We kind of know the number of emails we get approximately. Let's assume that it goes up, or because we are successful. That's one measure of success. Is it people scanning QR codes and filling in a form? Is it them emailing an email address? Whatever. I think that's because you can scan a QR code to compose an email if you want. There's a load of different ways we should look at this. So I think that's. I think that, as you say, working it through is great. I think historically, when solutions have been over-engineered to optimize too much automatically, that's generally not been that successful.
And they work well for the first month, and then they
optimizing over time. The real things you're seeing has tended to be the most successful, and actually incrementally solving things. But Alaric, you're gonna.
Yeah, we must avoid systems like Michael's that always fall over when the person who started it leaves. And that's why G Suite and a QR code seems to be a pretty good answer.
Well, let's not try and invent the system today, but I mean, that's obviously going to be our pushes. If we can make it work on the, Google systems, whether it's email, Google Forms, blah, blah, blah. Assume most people have smartphones, but maybe there's an iPad somewhere that they could use if there's not. I think that's the sort of model we want. Okay, cool. All right, well, we've got 9 minutes left. So I think the last, this has been really good. I'll be interested in perhaps setting up a group for everyone just to carry on chatting for this sort of stuff. But I think the last thing was, how do you, is there ways that Makespace could support maintainers or the act of maintenance or whatever better, do you think? Is there certain things that you it's Christmas, right? Is there anything that's on people's mind that you think actually if we did certain things?
Are you offering presents or something?
I haven't got my Santa hat here. No.
it's worn out after.
It's worn out. But yeah, I was just interested if there are other things that people wanted to raise. There was already some quite good things raised. Let me see if I can find my list. So there was a topic around bringing on new owners, which I thought was a really good one. I think owners even understanding that owners have a half-life is an important learning point, and often owners learn that too late.
And it's something that's currently not covered by any training, and often not covered by machine equipment documentation. So I think that's really
this is almost like not train the yeah. So at the moment we're doing train the trainers, right? In the training club.
This is train the maintainers.
Train the maintainers. But yeah, understanding trainers having a half-life is a very important learning point that generally comes too late. There was things about equipment insights and upgrades. So hopefully this team understands that MakeSpace is very much in the mode of, if there's things being used and they could be improved and that will give a better experience, if there's a good case for it, we'll try and make it happen. So I think this group is quite familiar with that, but perhaps should more proactive. You're a trusted group, right? So it's a lot easier if you're saying things are important. Please do so, because that it probably get actioned, right?
Yeah.
And it's a good mentality to have in the community as well. When we were building MakeSpace, it was a lot more obvious how things were getting done, because it was an empty room, right? And everyone painted the walls, and then stuff started to come, and everyone knew kind of how it was happening. I think that's not so obvious now. So you guys can be champion for that. And if that means scratching your own itch, then that's cool. And there were some things on the community account, but Andrew, the community account basically is working at the moment.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I only mentioned it at the beginning because A, it's something I do, and B, because some of the people here might not know it's something I do, and they might want to talk to me about it in a different context.
Definitely.
That's all.
Yeah, very cool.
Can I raise something on the community account side of things?
Yeah, of course.
One of my kind of there are certain annoyances with MakeSpace is I go in to do something, and there's bits that I need to do it and not there. So it might be something stupid like a box of screws or something like that. If there was kind of some way that MakeSpace could like sell stuff on, like a box of screws, as a whole unit or something like that, that we had a point of contact that was in there at a certain time or something. That was MakeSpace, I don't suppose, wants to get in the habit of providing nuts and bolts and screws and all that sort of stuff, but it becomes quite limiting when you get there and you're just like, something really simple is not available, or like sheet goods like MDF on a 600 by whatever size. If you go to B&Q, they charge quite a markup on it. It's also then a real pain to get into MakeSpace. So maybe there could be like a stock like they do for the laser cutter of certain sheet goods and stuff like that, I'll happily pay a markup to MakeSpace to have that for convenience, rather than trying to lug it in. And with Cambridge being Cambridge, I'm sure that other people will be in the same situation.
So I guess you're sort of asking for it. Could there be more general stores available?
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean it's worth thinking about, and so there's two parts of this as well to think about, right? So one is the sheet material. Like if I was going to split what you just said, there's the sheet material. Like, can we expand the shop to not only sell Kit Kats and whatever, but whatever? I mean, and diversity of products and it's classic stuff, right? But I don't see any reason why that's not possible. On the nuts and bolts thing, I think I tend to go with the philosophy of like when Ford used to check out or the people used to steal nuts and bolts, right? So they went through a period of like getting more and more better accounting. So you had to check out every nut and bolt, blah blah blah. And then the new guy came in and basically just filled the cupboards with these nuts and bolts, and anyone could take them, and then he just kept filling them until everyone had stolen enough nuts and bolts, right? Because financially that was much more sensible than the headache of administration and the pain it put on everyone, right? So for some of these things, we should be thinking MakeSpace should just fill the cupboard with nuts and bolts if that's what we need, and they're just free issue, right? And and occasionally we get people who are manufacturing things, and surprise, surprise, we're running out of thousands of these screws and thousands more need ordered, and we just have to squash that because that's, you know, we're not doing that. But yeah, if you're spotting things like this, if things are consumable, you know, like glue and whatever, yeah, I mean, we should draw the line, right? I mean, it's to have good glue around and it's just on tap is the thing. Alaric, yeah, do you want to?
It's on the subject of consumables. It's a bit of a hot potato there, but we don't actually provide consumables, generally speaking. And nuts and bolts are a good example of something we don't actually supply. We have some, people are welcome to use them, but we don't specifically keep stock. Things like glue and drill bits, yes. And I think maybe we may make it clear to members what we do and don't supply.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. But so my position was more a philosophical one, right? There's some things where it is worth MakeSpace spending a bunch of money on some consumables so that they're there, because the convenience of having them is way more valuable than the cost of the thing.
Yeah.
Right?
How many of us have got a stash of nuts and bolts or whatever in our MakeSpace box? How much,
exactly.
how much
exactly.
MakeSpace space is consumed by us all having the same thing?
So I think, I mean, that's my philosophy. That's not a decision by the board on anything like that. But I think it's a good sentiment that, you know, people do turn up to MakeSpace on bikes. If there is stock that would avoid them having to do stuff, or I guess Jonathan knows a lot about this, about people sending parcels to MakeSpace. Maybe, you know, we should have a really good parcel acceptance service. Not that we don't already.
We have. It's called Jonathan.
I know, but you know what I mean, right? If you know, these are the sort of things, you know, if it's ordered from Amazon have the key to our locker outside and blah blah blah. I have no idea, but you know what I mean, right? It's these things can be solved, and if they are real problems for members and we can solve them, the advantage is we can solve them for, you know, hundreds of people, right? And that might be the value. Certainly when I used to work at a place where they accepted parcels for the staff, that was incredibly heavily used, but it meant people weren't staying at home to collect parcels, and that was a big win, right? So for both parties. So yeah, I'd be interested in ideas here. This is cool. Yeah.
On the consumables, I mean, it quickly turns into a how do you keep a few of everything? It'd be very useful to get a sense of what are the sorts of things that would be good consumables to have, and you know, maybe we take a structured and constrained approach to it. Yeah. But that gets, you know, it's addressing the 80-20 problem of 80% of the time we will have the right thing in stock. And
the one thing to think about is often the idea of a vending machine comes up, and actually financially it doesn't really make sense to do a vending machine because of the environment we're in. Actually, a trust-based system tends to work out cheaper. So you know, if you're selling switches, I don't know, rocker switches, whatever, actually having a load of bags of rocker switches that people can buy and put money in a virtual iZettle pot is probably better than a vending machine, just because, like, yeah. But that doesn't mean the process of paying for an Arduino and taking it is not a thing we should support. Just don't necessarily get the idea that a vending machine is the only way of doing that, because actually every time we've looked at that financially, they're very expensive to rent and they're pretty horrible to buy. And yeah,
and they take a lot of
space. we trust our members generally.
And heavy maintenance as well.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But the pros,
we haven't really had people say, I'm missing this every time I come to the space. Steve's not the first one to bring up nuts and bolts. We kind of managed to sort through everything else. I think nuts and bolts stopped after someone did a project and they used about 2,500 nuts and
that
bolts.
Was it, yeah.
And
there was a lot of ordering of that particular box. Yeah.
The screws, the nails, the staples, everything else pretty much works. But yeah, nuts and bolts is definitely something we could start looking into again.
Paul, I think you were waving.
Yeah. I was just wondering, I was curious about, related to maybe what you were saying about, you know, packages arriving. What do you do for storage? If people, like a user wants to store stuff, can they rent a locker? Is there like a pigeonhole? How does that work at your space? I was just curious.
Well, so officially everyone gets a 35-litre box. So every member has a box that, you know, can hold stuff, generally an active project. And then there's a big dumping ground trove, which is a mixture of sort of stuff that you can repurpose. So it's just racks of shelves repurposed, but it's also, you know, people storing their sheet stock and other stuff. And there's a few other cupboards as well. But there's some semi-official scurrying places where people scurry stuff. But in general, the thing that we've done, which actually a lot of hacker spaces haven't done, and I think when they see what we've done, realize you can't store your stuff in any of the other places. And that we didn't have that at the start, and we introduced that relatively quickly. And I think that was a godsend, because it does mean that in the other rooms, everything has a home and is not your project. So when you leave, your project is not on the desk. So I'm sure we could do better stuff there around storage and member storage, I'm sure, but having the split between things where it's okay to store stuff and the space where generally there's no storage, like personalized storage. I'm sure there's some little hidey holes, Alaric, in that we don't know about, trapdoors and stuff. You know, false walls, things like that. But in general, I think that
spaces under kitchens and
yeah, that's how it's done. So there's an official box which is yours.
Yeah.
Sheet
That's
product
an
piled
elegant
up with
solution.
labels
I like
on
that.
and expiry dates and stuff like that. And Jonathan, I'm sure, is there any other things that have? That's about it, isn't it?
That's about it, really. We have an underfloor storage for large projects where you can roll things on. We hand out trolleys where you can put big projects.
And the fact, sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I was going to say the fact that also we do have some level of stock for some stuff, sheet stock, is another advantage, right? Because generally what it means is people aren't buying that material, then storing it for when they're going to use it and then use it.
Yeah.
You know, and if it's small enough sheets, generally, you know, it's an offcut, and they're like, it's something like donate it to the offcuts bin, and someone else might be able to use it because it's, you know, for 50p, am I gonna, or whatever, £1, am I gonna go and store it somewhere? So I'm sure we could improve it, but it doesn't feel like a big pain point at the moment.
There is an annual purge of everything that hasn't moved in a certain amount of time. So it's also an essential part. Otherwise, we would be completely full at Makespace and not have any space for equipment.
Yeah. So okay, so Santa hat back on. Any other things that people think would really help at the moment? I mean, we've covered a load of really good topics, which we should continue. But is there anything that stands out as? I mean,
is it useful if I just talk through some of the things we've been talking through around ways of thinking about equipment and the sorts of things that we might want to do, or perhaps we should have a more structured discussion in the next session in January.
Yeah, I think, like, because it's 5 past the hour now, so
okay.
we're 5 minutes over. So I think let's do that in a more structured way, so people have got the energy and time to do that. But yeah, any other things that people want to raise?
Maybe touch base with the conversations that are going on in the woodshop group, and actually resolve the issue in terms of sharpening. So I think sharpening is not just relevant for the wood lathe. I think an awful lot of people find the ability to have sharp tools in the wood shop a bit of an issue. So I think
Chris was meant to be on
metalwork.
Sorry,
including metalwork. That was what I was saying.
Yeah. So
Chris was meant to be on the call, unfortunately, but had to drop out, as he was going to represent that group as well. But you know, in some sense, the maintainers and the trainers, you know, I'd like the idea that is cross the whole of Makespace. And then of course there's all these little constellations of people worrying about different areas of interest, and you know, woodshop being a really good one there. But I like the idea that all the maintainers across Makespace have a shared channel where they can meet and share ideas and share learnings and stuff, because I think that will really help cross-pollinate all these learnings. So hopefully people on this call will be representing what the woodshop are learning and thinking about and injecting it into here, and vice versa, right? I think that's the responsibility of the woodworking team, to make sure that there's some representatives on this channel, if that makes sense.
And Alan, just on that particular point, Chris has flagged that, and it's one that we will revisit as a group of directors. I think, as we've outlined previously, we have the difficult balance of doing the things our members want to do, but also having to fit in with some university requirements and so on. So I think leave that with Chris, and he's going to champion moving that forward.
Okay.
Yeah, you've got a good champion in Chris there, yeah, and yeah, you're exactly right to worry about crossing. Okay, cool. I will try and write up some of these notes, but that was really positive, and I mean, Merry Christmas all. Right, well done for all the amazing work you've done over the years. It's like there's a lot of members who maybe don't realize that you exist,
Well,
and many that I'm sure do. And you know, over next year, I think that there's probably some good stuff we can do here, but I'd also like to make sure that you do see a bit more visibility, but also it may be a way to find other people who want to join this group, because I think it's probably very rewarding if they knew that it was even an option to join over time. Cool. All right. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Seasonal greetings.
Yeah, Christmas greetings, and I hope your New Year's goes okay. Your lonely New Year's. Right. Have a good evening, everyone. And
Thanks all.
Bye.
We'll speak again
Cheers,
soon.
everybody.
Have a good lockdown party, guys.
Yeah, lockdown party. Exactly. That sounds way cooler than it actually is, doesn't it?
Yes.
Bye.